Hi, I'm Neil Gibson, and in this short video I want to speak about attachment theory and how that links to therapeutic photography. I've been using therapeutic photography for many years in education, facilitating groups, in research, and I also run a number of courses as well. And I also wrote the book on therapeutic photography. What I've noticed is that a lot of the work that I've been doing and continue to do links so well to attachment theory. So in this short video, I'm going to give you a very quick overview of attachment theory and explain how I found it links to therapeutic photography. In a nutshell, attachment theory was something that was discovered or written about by John Bowlby and many others, including Mary Ainsworth. And it describes the way in which we form relationships, normally in infancy, and how that continues to influence our relationships across the lifespan. There are hundreds of books and websites that give you more information about the history and development of attachment theory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to describe the 4 styles of attachment, and whilst doing so, I'm going to explain how I feel they link to therapeutic photography. The first attachment style is the secure attachment. Now, I like to think there is no bad attachment style, but there are better attachment styles. And by that I mean secure attachment is probably the ideal. If you're dealing with somebody who has a secure attachment style, they are empathetic, they are non-judgmental, they view you as a human or an adult with adult needs, adult faults, adult strengths, and really can accept you for who you are because they are very comfortable with who they are. They've got a good sense of trust in themselves and a good sense of trust in other people. And the secure attachment really stems from that loving, supportive, nurturing environment that we have as very young babies, infants, children growing up. So if we have needs, our needs are met, we have attention, appropriate attention from our caregivers, and we feel that the world around about us is a relatively safe space and we can explore it and we can return to the care and loving attention of our caregivers. So that's secure attachment. And how does that relate to therapeutic photography? If you think about the dynamics of what we're doing in therapeutic photography, we're trying to create a safe space for exploration. We are trying to create an environment where somebody can bring photographs and talk about them without being judged, where they have empathy from the people around about them, which is very similar to what you experience in that secure attachment. So really, the whole therapeutic milieu of therapeutic photography should be akin to that secure attachment. The second style is the anxious, avoidant attachment style, sometimes called dismissive attachment style in adulthood. And what this means is that a child has grown up where that love, that attention, the emotional needs that the child has are not really being met because of the emotional distance from the caregiver. So the caregiver might think that it's appropriate to deny a child those hugs, that love, the attention, and it might be through no fault of the caregiver. So this is not about blaming people, it's just about recognizing that attachment is a survival strategy that we develop to cope with the situations that we're raised in. So if that love, that affection is not available, what happens is that the child grows up really trying to be in control of the situations that they go into, because they've really got to draw upon their own independence, because they have a low sense of trust in other people, but a high sense of trust in themselves. Now, this can lead to emotions being suppressed, but really trying to be very independent. How does this relate to therapeutic photography? Well, often you'll find that in adulthood, as I said, somebody can be emotionally distant. They might not be in touch with how they're feeling because they've never really had those feelings and emotions explored and explained to them as they've been growing up. So the world can feel like a lonely place. So coming into an environment where there's exploration, there's interest, but most importantly, where the photographer is in control, that's quite nice to feel that you are exploring in a therapeutic way, but you've got control in that process. So for me, it's that control element that links so nicely to the anxious avoidant attachment style, or that dismissive attachment style. So slowly but surely, it feels safer and safer to open up and start to talk about the self, talk about feelings, talk about emotions, talk about relationships, but having a strong sense of control in that process. The third attachment style is the anxious ambivalent attachment style, or the preoccupied, as it's often called in adulthood. Now, what this means is that a child has grown up in an environment where that care, that love and attention is a bit random. It's unpredictable at times. You're never sure whether your needs are going to be met or not. And often, as children, we'll really try to accentuate how much we need attention. And I've often heard the phrase a needy child, and this can relate to this sort of attachment style where the child really has to express emotions very, very severely sometimes, like really crying big tantrums to get the attention that they want from the caregiver. Now, what this means is that the child feels that they want to trust other people and they've got a low sense of trust in themselves. So as they develop and grow and become adults, they really try to become emotionally invested in other people's lives so that they are needed in other people's lives. And this can often manifest in terms of how people tell stories. Have you ever spoken with somebody where their narrative is all over the place and so convoluted, and you're going down different roads and alleyways and hearing about so-and-so's pet and they were adopted by this person. So it becomes a huge web of this convoluted story. That's often a sign that this person has that anxious ambivalent attachment style, or preoccupied. They become really involved in other people's lives. So, how does this relate to therapeutic photography? Well, for me, the photograph, the images that we use are an anchor point in the process. So, especially if you're working with groups, you are giving equal time, equal space to people where they're really focusing in on what they're photographing and then what they're saying about the photograph. So it reduces the risk of that long, huge, convoluted story going off on many different tangents, because the focus is really pulled into the photograph and the narrative that is behind that photograph. So it helps focus. There's still that element of control, but slowly but surely, the anxious ambivalent or the preoccupied attachment style person realizes that it's okay to have control. They're building up the sense of, this feels okay, this feels safe. So again, another positive. Now, the final attachment style is a disorganized attachment style. And this can be concerning because usually what it indicates is that there has been quite significant potentially abuse, but I would say significant issues when somebody has been growing up. It might be a lot of fear, might be living with a lot of anger, a lot of neglect. In essence, what happens is that the child cannot work out the world around about them because it's so unpredictable. So they might have one action and get a reaction one day, but a very different reaction the next day. So the child is unable to just build up this predictable sense of order in the world around about them. And it can lead to this feeling of being frozen, this fight or flight response, but also freeze response as well. You really don't know how to act. Now there's a whole neuroscience behind that in terms of cortisol being produced and flooding the system, and it can really impact on emotional development, emotional awareness as well. So, again, how does this link to therapeutic photography? It's not an easy fix, it's not an easy cure, but if you think about what I said about a secure attachment, that's the ideal. So if somebody has had that disorganized attachment style experience, they're coming into this group experience where there's empathy, there's non-judgment, there's routine, there's predictability. To experience that when all around you've had a different experience can be something that you learn from, that you build from. So I would go back to the therapeutic milieu as being a benefit for somebody who's had that disorganized attachment style experience. So that's it in a very, very brief nutshell in terms of how I feel attachment theory can help understand what happens in therapeutic photography, but can also impact on the experiences for those that have had insecure attachment styles, like the disorganized, like the anxious ambivalent, and the anxious avoidant. I will finish by saying, again, these are not bad attachment styles. These are just ways in which we've learned to cope with the world around about us. So it's not about diagnosing, it's about supporting and helping. If you've enjoyed this video, please visit the website. There are many more resources on there, and I also run a number of courses. So if you would like to come along and learn more, please do. You'd be more than welcome. Thanks.